Cool. We're rolling. So,
Nice.
well, getting this stuff started here. P10 podcast because we'll make some points, but barely. you know.
Just getting them barely across.
Yep. Exactly. Couple American-based F1 nerds. Been in it probably. You've been an F1 fan for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, there's like definitely been some on and off years where I haven't paid as much attention. Like I'd always kind of check results and be like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I've been watching it for a lot longer than I think I even realize. And it's like
Yeah.
even really funny because um I like have memories of you and I talking about it. I'm like, oh wow, that was like 15 years ago. We're
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
So
Crazy. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I remember because I didn't watch it a whole lot. I kind of followed it about as well as like I follow MotoGP now. I kind of know some of the guys, what's going on, see the race results and stuff. But like it was kind of you talking about Kimi Räikkönen that got me all psyched. 'Cause Kimmy's fucking Kimi Räikkönen, man. Still probably my favorite.
yeah, I same. I will just get this out of the way now. If there's a driver bias, it's for me, it's Kimi Räikkönen. So the rest of
Yeah,
them all suck, in
exactly.
my opinion.
Yeah,
They're all just want to be pretenders. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. Kimi, Fernando, I love that dude too. But that's great.
that
I saw a stat on him that he's 10 points away from being a five-time world champion. That's nuts.
it's kind of criminal. It's also kind of funny because I feel like that generation of drivers too. I mean, those were like probably like the last like Hardman
Yeah,
and like the
yeah,
V10s, the tires were crazy, and it's like those guys like basically had to get like the knife between their teeth for
yeah,
every race, to beat Schumi. And but yeah, I mean it's like I mean here's the biasy, but also I would think most people agree it's like Raikkonen could easily be five time. Sorry, Lonzo could easily be a five-time world champ. Raikkonen could be a three-time world champ. But
yeah,
one race goes a little bit differently, and they all
yeah,
just completely different, which I think is also like really cool. And it sort of is a little bit of the bummer of like where I think F1's at now. But I mean, it's not like it hasn't been there before, so it's nothing new.
yeah. Yeah, it's almost now a lot of those factors are kind of gone. Like reliability is so good. The cars make such a difference too. I mean, it's always kind of been that way, but Steve's now it's just this is what it is. You've got these teams that have a shot, and of those teams, you got George Russell that's a donkey, and some of these other guys. So it's like, okay, realistically, Lewis was checked out, done. So it's like, okay, you got Verstappen, Checo's freaking duking it out with Williams, and Lando and Oscar are kind of like this, and Charles. But yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know. Back in those days, they were men.
Yeah. Well, I think too, especially then, I mean, like no Halo,
Yeah,
safety was pretty minimal. I
yeah,
mean, I know it'd been, but like also, I guess kind of like really the biggest, clearly the biggest driver to die was like Senna, and that was
yeah,
like 94.
yep,
So it's like they're not even like 10 years away from that. So it's like theoretically, like you could have a pretty horrible crash and like still
yeah,
die. Um, so I don't, yeah, it's wild. But yeah, it's an interesting time.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I
like,
guess, oh, go ahead.
yeah, go for it.
Well, I guess to kind of kick it off, one thing that I never saw merging or happening was the Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari.
He's
Um,
40, man, midlife crisis. Everyone wants a Ferrari.
how great would it be? He just shows up in the paddock and he's got like some like hot blonde with like huge fake tits, and he's like, "This is part of the package, man. You
Yeah,
get the Ferrari, you turn 40, like this is what you
deal.
do."
This is my mail order.
I rescued her from Ukraine. It's fine, man.
Yeah,
It's humanitarian.
he's all fucking about that stuff. No, I do think that, I mean, it's a bold strategy for all of them. Like Lewis so easily could have retired this year or done another year at Mercedes, finished out the regulations, retired, been the Mercedes guy, and kind of been done. Now he's, a lot of those guys have done that, take that kind of bold step to Ferrari and try to pull Ferrari around. But Ferrari's been Ferrari for ever, the beginning of time, and not many have been able to do it. So, and Lewis isn't Fernando. Like Lewis just doesn't have. We'll see. I mean, he got his ass whooped by George all season long, pretty much.
Yeah, and you
So
could make the argument he was checked out,
yeah, yeah, I
which
think that's valid.
and I do too. I mean, I think as soon as you kind of make that choice in life, I mean, it's like things are gonna drop off or just change, and also just you're like, oh hey, like I really wish I was in that other car.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's been interesting. It's an interesting thing to see the fact that like he had, I mean, 3 years really of not performing as well as I think a lot of people thought he would
yeah,
against George, and that kind of, uh, I sort of get it. You could kind of make an excuse or kind of give him the benefit of the doubt for each one of those seasons, but um, it's interesting because I don't see. I think probably for like the first few races, him and Charles will be like buddy buddy, and I don't then see it really lasting much more than
yeah.
that.
I don't think Leclerc is going to have it. Mm-mm.
He's gonna shut it down pretty quick, I think.
Yeah. He's like, no. If anyone's winning for Ferrari, it's going to be the Prince of Ferrari, Leclerc.
Yeah,
I don't.
I
I
totally
don't think he's
agree.
going to play nice.
Why would he? Why should he?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's almost, I mean, we were talking about Toto still being stuck on complaining about 2021. We're still fucking whining about that. And Lewis, like, died after that. I mean, the car really I mean, you've seen how quick a car can go to shit, but Lewis really fell off after that. The little bit of him died, spirit break after that happened. And can he get that back? I don't know.
It's kind of like that moment, and I'll probably date myself with how old I am again, but it's like in The Simpsons where they're like showing it's like the like video where Lisa tells Ralph she doesn't love him, and Bart's like, look right here in this exact moment, you can see where his heart just breaks. And
Yeah,
I think if
exactly.
you like replay the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and like you
Yeah,
see like Toto like yelling like no Mikey no, and
yeah.
like just Lewis like
And
I agree with you, like I think, and understandably, like how could it not? But it's like Toto clearly has not recovered from that mentally. He's still very much a broken man.
yeah,
He must go to, bed every night just like hating Christian Horner and Red Bull and everything.
got photos of it.
um
Little X's to the eyes.
yeah. He wakes up, goes out to this garage, gets in his nice like Mercedes, and just sees like a photo of like Christian with like knives in it and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. And I think especially, I mean, kind of back to like your point with Charles, like one, why would he just like he's not going to give up without a fight. I mean, he came
No.
into the team a rookie and pushed Seb out.
Yeah,
Um, and so I'm sure he's kind of sent back like, oh, cool, Lewis is here, like 8-time world champ. But he's also sent back being like, this is my team,
yeah,
and I've driven the shitbox cars. I helped develop them. You want to come in here and show everyone how great you are? Yeah, over my dead body. And
yeah,
so I think I and it makes sense. Like you kind of see a lot of the like team owners. I think it's like Briatore and even Benotto talking about like I wouldn't have signed Lewis,
hmm,
and I totally get where they're coming from. I mean, you've kind of ruined a lot of team harmony,
yeah,
and
yeah. I
I
mean, they had such a good driver pairing.
right.
They got along. Carlos was the only guy that beat Max last season, or 2023, whatever. And I mean, the dude, he was like the perfect pairing. It's what I think they expected Checo to be over at Red Bull.
Yeah, because also, I mean, Sainz was definitely fast enough on his own right. I do think like Leclerc had the upper hand,
Yeah, for sure.
um, which I mean, like I don't think. I mean, science probably would not say that, but I mean, it's like it was like a perfect thing. Like he was like two, 3/10 maybe off
Yep.
Charles. He could pick up the pieces. He could win his race on his own day,
Yep.
qualify just fine. Like it's one
Yep.
of those things where he was reliable and they both seemed to get along pretty well. I mean,
Yeah.
had some
Exactly.
issues, but I think it's probably about as good as you can hope for in F1.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And kind of going back to your point of Lewis being checked out, I mean, they announced him leaving at the beginning of the season. So, like, think about trying to work through your 2 week notice in a job. That's the hardest 2 weeks to try to do well. And he did it for 24 races, a whole year. Here's my year's notice. That's just
Well,
crazy. Like,
like I would have given anything to like seeing the reaction from Toto like whenever like that news hit him because like
yeah.
if you think Abu Dhabi crushed him like what do you think that looked
No,
like?
no, it's not right.
How many times did he just slam his fist on the table just like no? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of funny too because I mean, we could go into the whole Mercedes thing, but the other part before we move off that is I can't. I don't know if I can handle um, the two most potentially toxic and also most like annoying groups of like fan groups, like Team LH and the Tifosi now merging and
Yeah.
having to merge. Like that's also going to create a lot of friction. And
Yeah.
while I don't, even though we're now starting a podcast, I don't participate in a whole lot of the like comment section on Instagram and X. I sure
Yeah.
do like watching that dumpster fire take place, and I can't wait to just kind of see.
Oh, it's gonna be chaos. And then like Max is just set up, I feel like, for a year. You had kind of point where you're talking about some penalty points. Dude's got a kid coming, has already made the comment of maybe I'll just finish out my penalty points and get a race ban and take a vacation. You guys, he's a total menace to the FIA. He's kind of, even though he's the 4-time world champ now, he's almost still kind of like the dark horse. Yeah, he's like kind of the bad guy. He's so Senna-esque. It's so like just it just stands like does not care, and he's scrappy and he drives hard and I don't know. It's just set up Lewis on the Ferrari, and then you're gonna have Max over here just shunting him into the wall every chance he gets if he gets close or something. It's like no.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because he's taken on the personality of so many different drivers in the sense of like, right, he drives like Senna. His like interview antics are Kimmy-esque, where he's like, I'd give anything to not be here.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
like, and at this point, I think he's also kind of like, I could retire tomorrow and be perfectly happy.
Yeah,
So throw whatever fine you want at me or whatever, and I don't care.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. He is the ultimate, just like the best mental place for any of this because he doesn't care, he doesn't need it, but all the dude wants to do is race cars fast. Freaking lives in the
right.
sim. The weekend after the finals, he was testing like GT3 cars or whatever. He was back at the track. He's been at kart races. The dude's been racing ever since the races ended. That's all he does. That's all he cares about.
Well, and back
So
to it. He's like Alonso.
yeah, just wants to drive,
Yeah.
not fucking care. So if F1 pisses, like he's so untouchable. F1 needs him more than he needs F1,
100%.
and he's the champ, so he can just do whatever you want to do. I'll go
Yeah, they
race.
can.
I'll go do whatever.
Oh, yeah. Well, they could sit here and claim all they want. I mean, it's kind of hard to say, but it's like they do need him, though, because
Yeah,
ultimately, what he's brought to the, I mean, whether you love him or hate him, I mean, he's like the heel in wrestling, too. Like, a lot of people don't love him, which isn't necessarily bad for the product. People, like, want to
yeah,
see him fail. They want to see
yeah,
him not win. They want to see a Lewis or a Charles, like, beat him to the line because
yeah,
so many people hate him, which is kind of great for the product. I mean, really, like if it
yeah.
didn't work, they wouldn't do it, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I mean that's kind of par for the course whenever you have someone dominant in a sport. Everyone's gonna hate them until they retire or get to the very tail end of their career. I mean, even Lewis, like I would argue that more people are fans of Lewis now than they were in 2018, 2019, even that did follow the sport at that point. But it happens in every sport. You look at motocross. I was actually hearing an interesting stat theory more than statistic, but like motocross, it's a smaller sport, so it's kind of easier to see some of this. It's had its biggest growth every single time there's someone extremely dominant. Jeremy McGrath, now Jet Lawrence coming in, the sport grows, and everyone just hates those guys when they're on the top. Hates them. And now, everyone hated Ricky, everyone hated it, and now it's like they're legends. And I think everyone's gonna hate Max for a long time. I'm sure people hated Senna back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, he, especially as he's outspoken and drove scrappy. And then there's Prost, the French guy, same thing.
Well, you can hate him for different reasons.
Yeah, you can hate him. He's French.
Yeah.
but, but yeah, it's Max is gonna be hated until the day's done, and then he's gonna be Max Verstappen, one of the greatest ever, and idolized forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we saw it with Seb. I mean,
Yeah,
those 2012, 20, I think it was 2011, people really started to hate him. And then until he went to Ferrari. I mean, I remember like that year, it was like the year they changed the regs and he was just having kind of a dog shit season. His engine was blown up left and right. And, people were like gleeful. They were like, oh my God, like, thank
yeah,
God.
yeah,
And so, I mean, yeah, like I think it's kind of the same thing. Schumacher, people hated him, but I mean,
yep.
that was sort of like when I started focusing more was because people were talking about how much they hated the dominance,
Hmm.
and so I was kind of like pulled back in because you're sort of like, oh, well, like what's so like bad about it?
Yeah,
Nothing. But I
exactly.
mean, it's true. It goes back to your point, like you said, yeah. I think those years of growth are the years you really see dominance, and especially like with F1. I mean, it's like really, it's generally been dominant driver. Maybe you get one or
Yeah,
two different kind of guys you can squeak in there, like a Jensen Button or something like that. But
yeah,
for the most part, it's domination to domination.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, and that's where it'll be interesting. Yeah, I think that's a big motivation with the regulation changes that they've been having. It was trying to closen up the field, and it worked well this year. I mean, you had what was it, 7 winners or something this year, 6 or 7. Should probably look that up, fact check it. But,
hey, we said we weren't going to be experts. We're
yeah,
barely
exactly.
making right. So
Yeah, exactly. There were a lot of people that won this year comparatively, so it did its job, and multiple teams won, and Alpine was up there a random time or two, and Williams got closer, and Haas did all right in some space, so it did bring the field together. Now, 26, we'll see. Sounds like it's just off to a terrible start, but cars are going to be smaller. That's good.
yeah, well, it's funny too because I think this is where like the old man curmudgeon in me, and also all the like both like just because I am getting older in my age, but also because like I think I've been like watching F1 long enough.
Yeah,
Like um that kind of the accomplishment that they had with the reg change of like closing up the cars, making it like kind of more like tighter field, like they did a good job.
yeah,
I don't know if people were expecting it to quite be like IndyCar racing or, but that's never really been F1, but I felt like they were actually
right.
pretty successful. And I'd hear people talk about like how boring some of the races were, how bad the racing was. I'm like, did you watch it? Like,
Yeah. And
it's
there were a couple, like, second lap onward to Monaco was terrible.
oh yeah, that race out, yeah.
But, that it's going to be what it is with the cars as big as they are and everything. Like, it's just how it is. But even then, you had a huge first lap crash. So thanks, Checo. That was fun. Came back. But other than that, like, they're some of the best races I've ever seen this year. It's just
Hands
like
down.
madness. Madness.
Well, I kind of hate the fact too that like sometimes like some of the races we did see, like Brazil.
Yeah.
I mean, just like what the driver capability was there, like what those guys were doing, the conditions they were driving in. I mean, that was incredible. How
Yeah.
I don't know how you kind of can't just kind of be in awe of like what the fact that those guys were keeping it on track.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah.
really yeah,
That's the
just
man curmudgeon bit of me. It's like too many driver's aids. It's too reliant on the car. We need to strip back, make it more of a driver sport so that, every race is a rain race kind of thing where the driver skill comes out more than how good the car is. Because I think right now, well, Checo might be total disproof of this, but I think if you put one of the kind of midfield or back marker guys in a Red Bull or a McLaren, maybe they're going to be up front.
yeah.
And this doesn't, there's only 20 guys. They all should be the best in the world. They all should be up there. But I do think there's a big difference in driver skill between Verstappen and Albon or definitely Stroll or something like that.
I don't know,
But
man. We didn't even get to see him go through the race. That sneaky gravel
exactly.
trap just
See, he was
reached
the
out and
smartest
got
one.
him.
Just, you know what? If it's raining, I'm just going to park it in the gravel and go have a beer instead.
You know what? That's actually pretty funny. Here we are criticizing him for that. He probably was like, why am I doing? Oh no, gravel, like
Yeah.
So
Like, cool. I'm going to drive around here and get soaked in rain, can't see, be stressed out and miserable for 2 hours. And for what?
and
15 days?
right.
Cool.
Fernando's just gonna make me look like an ass anyways. Like, why don't I
Yeah.
just get this over with?
Yep.
And he's also like, have you guys been to Brazil? Have you seen what's here? Like, really, you wanna be at the racetrack right now? So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, to your point, I mean, I think it's like it is interesting. I would love to kind of see a little bit more of like that reshuffling because I mean, it's like you can
Yeah.
kind of look at like Valtteri at Baltas, like he goes to Sauber and he finished what I think he was last in the driver
Yeah.
classification. And
22nd or whatever. Like,
no,
yeah.
like,
Yeah. That,
does
that's not
anyone really think he deserved that position? Like,
no.
right, like the car was trash. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was one of the greatest driver pairing duos of all time. It was Merc 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, and he beat Lewis Hamilton times, and he won, like multiple race winner.
and he
Changed
kept
car 22nd out of 20 drivers.
well,
Come
and it's
on.
crazy too to think about. I mean, he was giving Lewis a pretty honest run for his money in
Yeah,
qualifying.
yeah, yeah,
So, and that's when he was at his peak. So, I mean, you
yeah,
could kind of argue, like, really, like that gap should have been bigger.
yeah,
But yeah, no, I mean, it's like it's not his fault that basically that Sauber was, you know, something that looked like it had like a hamster on a wheel for an engine, or
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. 1 second.
yeah.
Well, that kind of gets us into this next season, last season of the regs, and we've got all of the rookies. This year's going to be good. We've got ideally the most refined cars for the regulations, and then drivers that don't know a damn thing. Bunch of kids. So,
Yeah, there's nothing like putting a bunch of rookies in like some of the fastest cars that exist and being
yeah,
like, all right,
yeah,
go get after it.
exactly. Has there ever been a season with that many rookies?
I don't know. I mean,
Not
off the
that
top of my
I-
head, I can't think of one.
Yeah,
Which is, I mean, it's great because there was a lot of years there where it seemed like there was like you'd maybe get one, maybe two, but
yeah. Or Haas would have both the rookies, and then just they'd crash into walls every single race, and then everyone's like, "Nah, let's not do rookies."
maybe we shouldn't bring in the guy whose kid or whose father is like threatening you with like kind of the threat of like violence if you don't give him the right tires or whatever. So,
Yeah, exactly.
hey there.
We've got some paper in the throat.
Oh
Come on.
no.
You're
Make
still
rip it a
breathing.
good one.
Yeah.
Um,
But
yeah,
yeah, wildest one to me is Antonelli going straight into Mercedes. Think about every team, like Ferrari's not bringing any rookies in. Every other team's kind of a midfielder, and Red Bull's got the junior program, and Lawson's the quickest guy to go into a Red Bull seat, but he did sometime at Cash App at least. And then you got Antonelli just, hey, you totaled the car in the one practice session you get. It's in. Here's a seat.
I mean, without a doubt, the kid seems fast. He seems capable, I guess, as ever. But you also kind of have to. Um, I would almost chalk that up more to like the broken Toto with his like mentality of like, oh, I don't want to make the same mistake I made with George.
Yeah.
Um, but I also kind of feel like that's quite the gamble because I mean,
Gamble.
really, I guess what George has been in F1, I guess 6 years now. But I mean, he's prone to his mistakes. He's not. Is
Oh,
he really like ready to like lead a team like that?
right. Yeah, you got, yeah, exactly. Russell being the lead is risky. And then, I mean, every other rookie except for Bortoletto hit, well, and Doohan. I don't think Doohan's had any races, but those are more midfield teams. And every other rookie, Lawson, all them have at least had some races under their Behrman. They've had races under their belts to get some kind of an idea. And Antonelli's just right into the deep end. And I think there's, I feel like there's high expectations because everyone kind of knows George probably isn't going to be that lead guy. George isn't going to be a 7-time world champ. He's just not.
No,
So,
you can't post that many shirtless photos and still be a world champ.
yeah,
So
exactly. Exactly. Well, that's what Toto's wanting. He wants to bring in that next world champ. So, big shoes to fill for a little 18-year-old rookie.
yeah, well, it's really crazy because I think also kind of like I guess to me maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I also kind of like look at it and think like what's Toto trying to say to the team? Like, oh, we're in this full transition and like basically these next few years we're really going to be at least next year. I mean, I guess you could argue maybe he knows something, they've got this huge gap on the rest of the field with the engine regs for
I
26, but it
heard the Mercedes engine was supposed to be a monster for 26.
yeah.
So, but I mean, that's also every team goes through that. They dominate for a while and then they fall off and understand that they got to rebuild, and this just kind of is what it is for a couple years. So,
Yeah.
I just
And
be
maybe
expecting that and no, be looking
and
for 27, 28 to be back up
yeah.
there. These
Well,
guys
and
play.
maybe this is a smart move for them too because also there's also the other side of it where Toto's probably like happy he doesn't have a 7-time world champ sitting there expecting them to deliver them a
Yeah,
championship winning car. So
yeah,
maybe he can also kind of be like, hey, just go out there, race it. Let's get the feedback, figure it out. We've got the good engine cooking for 26.
yeah,
Whereas, every year, I'm sure as soon as they sat in the car, Lewis probably shot Toto a look like, man, this thing sucks.
yeah.
Like, so,
Dog shit.
exactly.
Is this? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you have to figure that they're a hell of a lot smarter than we are. So, I'm sure Toto's got a plan, and there's a reason behind it. It's kind of the same thing with Lawson. I mean, I think a lot of people feel like Yuki deserves that seat just because Yuki's been on the junior team for 4 years, coming into five, and he is a good driver and he's shown some speed. But there's with Honda going to Aston in 26, there's rumor of Yuki following that because he's close tied in with them. And then as well, I think Helmut Marko had a statement that what they saw out of Lawson and him being as close to Yuki as he was in 6 races, yeah, Yuki typically outperformed him, but Yuki's been in that car all year and been in that team for 4 years. Lawson was 6 races in and that close. So they're
Right.
like the splitting with Lawson.
He's unhappy too.
I mean, if you would just
Oh no.
chill, just chill.
Yuki!
Quit being a terrorist. Bottles. Just mother. All right. Yeah. Anyways, um, I feel bad for Yuki. I like the guy, but I think it's kind of the same deal with Horner's. He knows where Max is at. He's looking for the next one. Lawson's showing some good things. He probably a better chance of being that guy than Yuki is. So
Yeah, and it is super sad because I feel like in a lot of years, well, I guess it's kind of like Max and Carlos. I mean, like I mean, it's Red Bull's ruthless, but like when they
yeah,
both came in and they were there at Toro Rosso, like it was kind of like, well, which one are they going to take?
yeah,
And it was very kind of quickly understood that it was going to be Max. I feel like
yeah, yeah. So
this one's
too.
just a little bit more ruthless because it's like Yuki's like really proven, and also like you kind of can't argue with the fact that like the guy's shown year over year improvement in all
Yeah,
the areas that they kind of asked for him.
yep,
Um, so I'm guessing he's gonna have to clearly do like the same thing like Carlos or Gasly did, and he's gonna have to go find something else. And hopefully
yeah.
he's the one who pushes Stroll out. You
Nah,
know,
that'd be
like
awesome.
oh, he would. I think he'd become the worldwide fan favorite even more so than he is if he got
Could you
Lance out of
imagine
that.
Yuki and Alonso on Aston in 26?
It'd be,
Epic.
exactly. Who doesn't want that? Come on.
Be just chaos. Especially if they've got a good car.
Oh, dude, and those radio messages are gonna be epic.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like, like, just both of them can just be so salty and just like angry and hate filled, but like also like, you know,
That's
nice
funny.
pass. Be like, I told you.
Yeah, exactly. Alonso had a car malfunction, parked it, and they're like, push this button, push this. I pushed all the buttons. You do it yourself.
I, I mean, 20 was it 22 or 23? I guess when the Aston was good. I mean, like I forgot how fun loving Fernando was, but like angry old man Fernando is like truly just one of my favorites. Like him, just
So
like
good.
I don't care. I will say whatever I want, and you're just gonna
Yeah,
have to deal with it.
exactly. What are the other ones? He like tried to avoid the wall in Baku or something, and just pushed like all of the buttons. And they're like, "Did you push the pit button?" I pushed all the buttons to keep this fucking going.
And
Yes.
how that man hasn't lost it, because like I mean, truly, like think back. I mean, it's like I don't really think anyone on the grid doubts how good Alonso is,
No.
and his last win was over 10 years ago, and he's just been driving shitbox after shitbox, and just like I mean, just the anger of just like I don't deserve this. Like,
Yeah, dude, ruthless for that rule alone. Just so long of doing so terribly. But everyone still knows that he's like the guy.
yeah.
Look how quick
Well,
everyone lost faith in Ricardo. A couple bad teams, bad years, and it's like, oh, dude's done. And then you got Fernando sitting there, rookie of the year for the last 10 years in a row. Like, oh, he's coming back, dude. He's gonna do it.
well, I think my favorite thing with him was it was like I think it was that last year he was at McLaren, and he was like, well, I clearly like can't really. I maybe will get points, but what I can do to really show how good I am is I will just destroy my teammate that everyone thought was like the top level
Yeah.
rookie. I'm gonna whitewash him in qualifying and just be entering every interview, just making a point about how I'm the greatest driver here. And it was
Yeah.
funny too, because I think it was that last race in Abu Dhabi. They were like, come on, go get a point. He's like, I've already got like 2,000 points. I don't need another one. And he's literally like cutting chicanes, like just like truly like, I don't care. Like, like had no regard for anything. So,
Unhinged.
um, yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, there's nothing. I really hope like everyone's kind of talking about how Adrian Newey's not really going to be able to make much of an impact on this year's car, but I hope
Yeah.
hopefully he can just come in and give Fernando something. And even if that car is like remotely better than what it
Yeah.
was, if he can, and with things being closer, that pure anger and everything will just drive it up like two or three places. And hopefully he can have some battles with a lot of these other guys. I mean, I also can't wait back to the Lewis thing for like when they completely botch his strategy and then he's back there duking it out with Alonso and Alonso hates Lewis and Ferrari. And
Yeah.
so that will just be an epic on track battle. So
Yeah. So good. Oh man. Yeah. Just wait for the whiny messages from Lewis once the strategy's botched.
yeah,
I can't believe
yeah.
what is going on here.
Right.
It's not-
Well, it brings me back to the whole like we win together, we lose together, except for when I go to Ferrari. So,
yeah. Except when we lose, you guys suck. When we win,
right.
I'm the best. Guy.
Yeah. He's gonna be like, man, this is why I needed to learn Italian so I can just swear on the radio and people, they can bleep it a little easier. So,
Yeah. I was listening to Yuki. That was on like Red Flags podcast, I think. I was listening to Yuki. They're asking him about like swearing in English. And, like, is it better than swearing in Japanese? Dude, he's like, oh yeah, dude. Like Japanese just kind of doesn't really hit. He's like, in English, it hits the spot, man. You just feel better when you just. He's like, it feels good. That is amazing.
I can imagine. Like, yeah. Who doesn't just like let a big F bomb drop like when you mess something up? Like, so
Just wait till he learns all the other fun words we have.
I know. Too bad there's not an Australian team. Then he really starts incorporating the C word. He'll be like, oh, this is a good one.
That's awesome.
You guys have been holding out on me. So wait, it can be a good thing and a bad thing? Oh,
Yeah,
I love this.
every other word now.
Yeah.
And we do have two Aussies and a Kiwi on the grid now.
Oh man, I love it. And it's
Oh,
oh no. Um yeah, I love it. I think it's good to have a little bit more of that balance out and to kind of see
yeah.
those guys from especially when you kind of look at I guess a lot of their feeder series too, like they seem like I don't know exactly. I'm not super well knowledgeable
Yeah.
about like what they've got down there, but it seems like they're pretty competitive, and it's like, excuse me, you're kind of like in a sense like those areas like everyone sort of knows everyone. I feel
Yeah.
like so it's like makes it like extra competitive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's kind of a like mystique with the Aussie athlete. And it's because they don't have the resources that the Europeans do and stuff like that. But they are a bunch of crazy bastards down there. And they do have, they're competitive in karts and they've got things like V8 supercar. So they've got things to go fast in. But then when they make the decision to go for it, it's like burn the boats. We have to go. We have to win. Like
yeah,
there's no, and for the Europeans, it's like, oh, I had to drive 45 minutes, relocate an hour down the road to another country, and whatever. And the Aussies, it's like, okay, we're selling everything we own. We're moving across the planet. It's make it or break it. And so it just kind of breeds that ruthless, and they're in every sport that way. Aussies, South Africans, all those kind of down in the middle of nowhere places.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I feel like those guys, I mean, like you look at like the Lawrence brothers, it's like
Yep.
you either we either like really go to the top or we
Yeah.
just don't do this at all.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I think that and it's funny too because it was kind of that other thing like you mentioned with like Lawson with like mindset and everything. I mean, I'm sure that had to play a role a little bit like in his like mental strength of just knowing like if I'm gonna go halfway across the planet to go race karts or cars, like this better not be a waste of time. Like
Yeah.
I need to like deliver. So yeah, it's I'm really excited to see that, and I'm excited to kind of see how he copes with being in that Red Bull seat. You know, maybe part of
Yeah.
that kind of like Kiwi. I don't care. I'm here to just like do what I need to do. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
perfect attitude that they need in that car. So
Yeah. I mean, he showed that with Checo. Raced him much harder than anybody else, and then flipped him off. And then, in like the same breath, just lets Max go by. It's like,
I also
okay.
wonder if any of the engineers are like, dude, you know, like lifting your finger up like that, like the aerodynamic drag that you just
Yeah.
caught, you know? Like,
Like a tenth of a second.
he's like, but it was worth it. So,
Yeah, exactly. But did you see that?
he's not in the car anymore, so it worked. Come on, man.
Exactly. Checo's gone. Lawson's in.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's I don't know. I'm curious. I can't wait to see who screws it up first. I think unfortunately, I think you sent me that thing saying like Doohan only has like a guaranteed drive for like 5 races.
Yeah, I think they're, and it's because Colapinto's on the radar. Yeah,
Nice.
the kid did well, but there's also the fact that in a small handful of races, he caused more damage than almost any other driver. Like, dude, he put it in the wall plenty of times. Like Colapinto's, I want to see that guy on the grid, but it was like as soon as it was confirmed he wasn't getting any kind of seat, then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, doing better performer, he's gone." It's like, dude, the kid hasn't even gotten in the car. You got him going into off season and all this stuff already with that hanging over his head.
Yeah.
Gnarly.
Hey, man, and it's like so crazy, like, because then I think you and I were talking about it too, like, Kevin Magnussen was talking about like how toxic it was there,
Yeah.
and when it was Renault, and I think I saw an interview with Julian Palmer, and he was talking about like I think it was pretty sure it was 2017. Yeah, it was like they basically he was like he wasn't performing, and it was like they came back from summer break, and he was like they basically like were just like around the corner like making phone calls to other drivers' agents, just trying to get someone else in the car, and he's like, hey, like what's going on? And they're like, yeah, 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 don't worry about it, you know, and they're probably like smoking their cigarette, like whatever. But it just like it's crazy, and you look at all the like the burnt bridges with Piastri, Alonso, like all these
Yeah.
guys, and it's like you know, and even when they were interviewing Ricardo after McLaren dropped him, and they're like, "Oh, would you go back to Alpine?" And you could just sort of see, like in his eye, he's like, "No, like, that's no." So,
Yeah.
have you been to France? No, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't really understand how they expect to. I mean, that whole team. I don't understand anything about it. I think Briatore could be great, or he could just make it implode that much faster, which is maybe what they want. Um, but yeah, for doing it, it's pretty savage. I mean, it's like you get 5 races, do or die, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, Doohan's dad was MotoGP legend, Mick
Oh,
Doohan.
I didn't.
Yeah. Like, that's why I don't know MotoGP that well, but I think Mick has been a MotoGP world champion.
Whoa.
Think. But regardless, he was one of the best. Fast dude. So Jack, but it's kind of like Mick, Michael Schumacher, and that's kind of another, point that I had. It's like we've got all these rookies, which is cool, but then you got, where's Is Mick just done? Did he just blow it in that shitbox of a car, Haas, ripping it in half, and he's done? Like I would love to see that kid get a fair shot. I think.
Yeah. No, I mean I completely agree. And it's kind of one of those things too where like you sort of wonder they're like did the rest of the like paddock kind of basically be like, well, if like Gunther can't whip him into shape, can nobody?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
and it's also you kind of like look back at that car and like how slow it was. What was that, 2021 or whatever?
yeah. I think
You
so.
know, I mean, it's like you're like, did you guys was that even like a favor for him? Like, how much of a shitbox was that thing?
Yeah. Well,
And
his teammates with Mazepin, right? That was the two like worst conditions to be in. I've heard
yeah,
Mazepin was a nice kid, but terrible, terrible driver. Again, was the best 20 in the world. Way better than I could do.
oh
But
yeah,
it's
circles, yeah,
Mazepin, Mazepin should not have been in the car.
no,
So, and Haas had it all. Then Haas was just going through it. And then they got two rookies. And Mick, yeah, he just to come into the sport, he came in under probably the hardest conditions you could be under. And on top of that, he's Mick Schumacher. So he's always going to be under his dad's shadow. And that doesn't work out very well very often.
no. I mean, right? Like you look at it's the hills, but Damon came in. He had his dad's
Yeah.
heritage behind him, and then Nico with Keke.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like, I mean, and Nico talked about often how like he'd go to karting races and people basically were like, oh, well, it's Keke's son. Like,
Yeah.
like the expectation was there and basically kind of talk about like wanting them to fail. I can't
Yeah.
even imagine if you're Shumi's son.
Yeah. And
So,
that's exactly like the flip side of that is Max and Joe's Verstappen, but Joe's was not good. Just didn't do that well. So yeah, he made it. He was a driver, but he could kind of take, that's just that lethal combo. It's like the soccer dad, the mini dad, the whatever, just beat this kid into being fast, leave him at a gas station. So you get that. Well, like I see it in other sports too, or when you have a super successful multi-time champion or something, and they have kids, they're kind of like, you really want to do this? Like, it kind of sucks. It's kind of a pain in the ass. It's dangerous. Like, there's other things you could do. Why don't you just go to school? A lot of moto guys that are kind of the generation I grew up watching are having kids, and they're all of them. Like, I really don't want my kids to race. If they really want
right.
to, I'll support them, but don't know. Whereas, like, all the ones that do well, yeah, parents may have been into it, but they never made it, or at least never went multi champion or something like that.
Yeah, it's
So,
like you can almost look at like use for Verstappen. He took every bit of his like career failings and frustration and poured them into
yeah,
Max and was
done
like,
exactly.
You will never make this mistake that I made back 20 years ago or whatever."
Exactly.
Um, and yeah, and to your point, I mean, it's like you also like you look at like Tomac. I mean, like John was mountain bike and road.
Yeah, that's true.
Eli's like, I'm not doing that. And
Yeah,
I
there's support.
every indication was that he could have and should have. I mean, clearly physically
Yeah,
he can handle a bike.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, and I kind of, you do see that. That is like a really good point. I mean, a lot of these guys, I think, unless you're like the Raikkonens, where he's just like, I did this for fun because
yeah,
I'm just what this is what I want to do. I think, but the rest of them do. They kind of seem to kind of guard against that because I think they're also
yeah,
like maybe trying to A, protect him, and B, be like, I don't really want you to like go through the crap I went through.
yeah, yeah. And then Mick, especially because he's got all that against him, but he also hasn't gotten to have the benefit of his dad actually being there and helping him. You know, that all happened when he was so young. He didn't actually get the knowledge or training that Michael could have passed down to him. So Mick is essentially done it fatherless for so long.
Right. Because then he
So
just had a broken Sebastian Vettel being there, being like,
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
when I was at Red Bull, this is how we used to do things. I can't get these Italians to do anything, but all right. Like so.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's a good point because there's moments where like he really could have used that mentorship and like,
Yeah,
getting someone to kind of like work with him. He didn't have that
right.
input. So yeah, it's really it's a sad thing because yeah, you do kind of like wonder. You're like, what could he have done with like had the car just been a little bit better
Yeah,
and maybe a team that was like a little bit more geared towards like having a younger driver because Haas has never had
yeah.
young drivers.
No,
So
yeah, Haas has been just thrown to like cannonballs in a car, make them drag this tractor with no money up as far as they can. Yeah, like Williams or something might have been a great team for Mick to go to. They're pretty used to that. Yeah, they were dog shit terrible, but they
right.
kind of knew it, and just it seemed like pressure was low there. They let guys kind of develop and grow, and then like Albon and those guys they're coming around, and the team got better this year for sure.
And how savage was that quote from James Vowles where he's like, "Mix nothing." What do you say? Like, "Mix nothing special"
Yeah,
or something to
yeah,
that effect. Which you're
honestly,
like,
that
that had to have been the death. That was the death nail, like right there.
yeah,
Like,
and he may not be wrong. I mean, that's
no, right?
probably. I'm sure if Mick, I'm because he was a reserve driver for Merck this year, I think, right? So I'm sure
Yeah,
he's in the cars. I'm sure he's gotten lap times and test sessions. So if he's not, and all these guys do some kind of competition to see, to pick their drivers. So he clearly didn't do anything special in any of the things he probably has been in. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I guess I'm guessing his career is probably done,
yeah,
unless I mean I think it sounded like the only promising thing that was kind of out there was like Bernardo was looking at him for Audi, but like then they
yeah,
didn't choose him. So it's like that also is pretty bad because I mean he was part of the Ferrari development team during that time when Bernardo was there. So you
yeah,
would argue like if he was like, oh no, like we put him in a good car and like he was great, like he would
yeah,
probably would have been pursuing him more. But
yeah, yeah. That's true. And Audi sounds like it's set up to be a dumpster fire as well for a while. So
God, talk about like
you
hype
know,
train to just hitting the
yeah.
walls.
Yeah, I mean, they were saying that their engine's expected to be like way slower than everybody else already. How? Fix it. You've got a whole year. Go fix it. Like, what
How
are you
also,
doing?
I mean, this is something I don't really, and like I'll speak like truly to like the true ignorance that I have, but I'm like, if
Yeah.
you're Audi, I mean, Audi owns Lamborghini, like
Yeah.
all these big, Volkswagen Group, like they own all these giant car companies, or I think they're like the third biggest car company in the world. How do you guys not have engineers who can come in and be like, oh, I see what you're doing wrong, or like, hey, have you tried this? Like, it's just
Yeah.
like, I understand like the breakdown, and I know I'm sure like the Germans, they're probably like, no, these are our specific engineers for this, and they will only work on this.
999.
Right.
This is what we do. It
You don't
sucks.
trust the Italians? No. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, like I just like I kind of like wonder like how are you guys that bad? They even got rid of the like MGUH, so it's like, but they have hybrid cars, they have
Yeah.
electric cars.
Yeah. I mean, the point of voting Lamborghini is it's a great point. Talk about engines. Like, holy shit, man. They've got full, hybrids, every different form of it, big naturally aspirated. They've got it all, and they're all the fastest. Like pull
Yeah,
a Lamborghini engineer out of there and have him come build your F1 motor because it'd probably be pretty easy for him. But I don't know.
yeah. It
Basement, so I don't know you know. But it's
it's
just
but it's
weird.
pretty astounding too. Like you look at how much money they've brought in.
Yeah,
I mean, like it's already they haven't even turned into Audi yet, and it's already this massive failure because they had to shit can
yeah,
the two Andreas Seidel and one of the other guys that they had, and then the engine sucks. It's like whoa, and then yeah,
yeah,
that Sauber chassis is something real special already. So
yeah. maybe they could do a pit stop in under 35 seconds.
Good Lord, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And I just I don't know how a year out you can already just be like, "Yep, we're gonna suck." You got time. So I just, even if it's okay, don't do anything on the 25 car. Spend no money on it. Tell your guys to just keep the damn thing on the road so they don't breach cost cap
Right.
and put everything you have into the 26. That seems to be the Williams approach too. Seems to be Aston, seems to be Mercedes. Like just get through and let's dump everything into 26.
It's really interesting. Yeah, like because I remember you were kind of, I mean, going back to your original point of like how next year could be, it's like I do wonder how many teams are really like you get 5 races to develop the current car or
Mm-hmm.
two or whatever, and then they just kind of throw in the towel. So it's
Yeah,
like sort of one of those things too, where it's like I'm really curious to, it could be a pretty polarizing field where it's like you've got 3 teams maybe who are duking it out at the front, and then the
yeah,
rest are just like, we do not care,
yeah,
which is insane because was there like 24, 25 races next year?
yeah.
And
Something like that.
it's that's a long season, 24 plus sprints. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it's kind of interesting to see like how many of those teams might just be kind of sitting
yeah,
in that area, and especially with it being an engine formula. I mean, that's like the big differentiator because you
right.
don't, building a new wing takes some time, but not nearly as much as like putting together a whole new engine spec.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then I don't know. I guess on the flip side, Ferrari did really well at the end of the season by not upgrading their car. They left it the
Right?
same, and everyone else kind of went the wrong direction, except for McLaren. But then for 25, apparently they're saying they're only reusing 1% of the car. It's a whole new car. So it's just, I don't know.
I,
You
well,
would
and then it,
maybe they were like, okay, we know these regs. We've got this car this good. This is as far as we can take this. Anything else is going to be down. And then they just banked all this knowledge to go, we're going to, you know, RB19 basically for 2025. We know what to do and we're just going to start over. And we know it's going to work at least pretty well. And we're going to wipe the floor with everybody.
yeah,
Could
and
be.
totally. I mean, and it's like this is kind of the fun thing about Ferrari. It's always a crapshoot.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
could always it could pay off like amazing. I mean, they kind of did that back with Shumi. Like they
Yeah.
then created the 2004 where they even thought that their data was wrong because the car was so damn fast in testing.
Yeah.
Or they come out and they're like, "Boy, this thing's a shit pig. Like this really isn't good."
They're going to come out like preseason. They're going to, guys, check it out. No side pods. We figured it out.
Lewis, we are so happy you're here. Check
Yeah,
out what we did.
we
We got
did.
this.
No side pods. He's just gonna.
I'd be like, "Hey, Charles, you using that toaster by the bathtub? Okay,
Yeah.
well let me have it after you're done, please." Like so.
That would totally be a Ferrari thing to do, though. We figured it out. What are you doing? Pit, no pit, pit, no pit. I don't know.
Yeah, I really I can't even begin to articulate like how insane it's gonna be. And especially too, like back to like watching the social media dumpster fire of like seeing the conspiracies that are gonna happen. Like
Yeah,
of like which driver might have like the bad luck one week over another.
yeah,
It's gonna be
yeah.
beautiful.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be madness. Because I mean, that already happened with Lewis and George this year. It was, oh, they're sabotaging Lewis's car. They're putting him under duress so that he can't perform. Like all of this crap. Yeah, once he gets to Ferrari, it's oh
And then meanwhile you got George like saying that Max is like trying to kill him.
yeah,
He's like threatening to take him out during the races, and then you got the other drivers kind of like, Oh, did he? Like so?
Everyone else got the popcorn out. Like, all right, this was
Yeah.
it.
Oh
Max,
no.
Max, did you hear what George said this time?
Hey man,
Told you.
does that piss you off? Whether
Yeah. He said being Dutch sucks.
yeah. He said those waffles. He's like trash.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, sagging it on.
Yeah.
Well, I did see though, actually, I sent it to you that Lewis is getting like 1,000 hours or 1,000 kilometers of test mileage, and Charles isn't getting anything.
Yeah. So, what do you think? What like? What's your take on that? Like, what do they get?
It makes sense in a way because Lewis is coming in a new car. It's going to feel a lot different than the Mercedes. So that makes sense. It's just kind of getting him up to speed. But this is what's awesome about F1 is the drama and the shit that just like immediately begs, oh, Lewis is getting preferential treatment. It's just like kind of the face of it. That's what it just feels like a knee jerk. So mentally or just politically in the team, yeah, I don't know. Breakdown, it probably makes sense. It's just getting Lewis accustomed with the car. And it's not the current car. It's with an older car. So, because
Yeah.
I mean, they can't drive the current car. So it's kind of like, yeah. But
Yeah. I almost wonder if they're like giving him the was it the 22 car? Because that
yeah, I
was
think
like
so.
the best one. That was like kind of out of the bag or out of
Yeah.
the box, basically. So it almost makes me wonder if they're kind of like, hey, this is. But I guess if they're completely redesigning the car, this may not be the case, anyways. But yeah, it's interesting how much they're like either like trying to get him bedded in and also get his like feel like almost like or rather his feedback to go into the new car as soon as possible
Yeah.
so then that
Yeah.
way they can kind of because it's like maybe they also know like they can't really get the drivers like with Max and kind of the Red Bull because it's like does anyone really think the Red Bull is going to be like that trash next year that he still can't
Yeah.
win. So it almost makes me wonder if they're kind of like let's just get both these guys like is like close to even as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I see that.
it also kind of has like the downside of like what if there's issues and then like Charles isn't feeling as good with that car
Right.
and
Yeah. If
now
they kind
you're
of
in
steer development towards Lewis, and then all of a sudden Charles can't drive it well, then he's just sitting back like, what the hell, guys?
it, yeah because also I mean it's like what if you handicap Charles in qualifying. Lewis
Yeah.
hasn't been as sharp.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, these are the what ifs. I mean, there's always like what kind of makes F1 I think so like interesting is the complexity of it all. Like where
Yeah.
do you play it safe and then where do you kind of not? But yeah, it's really interesting. I I don't know what to make of that either. Like my knee jerk is sort of like wouldn't you kind of split it down the middle? But
Right.
maybe and it's also like you always kind of got to wonder too are these like reports come out because it's like is it coming out of Italy, is it coming out of Germany or Great Britain because it's
Yeah,
also
that's
like
true.
you
Could just
know
be.
because maybe Charles was like put him in for the entire like he's like I've driven all these old cars I don't really give a
Yeah.
shit and get his feedback so that way we can work on it because also maybe from him he's kind of playing the like alpha game of like oh I'll be able to
Yeah.
drive whatever you give me
Yeah.
and we've kind of seen I mean it's like Ralph Schumacher's made these comments and it's kind of confirmed a little bit of what I thought Lewis really does require a certain car
Yeah.
to
Yeah, he does.
perform I mean so maybe it is all like kind of like all well good intentioned from the whole team but they're like Lewis is an older guy now let's make sure we get him something decent he can perform with
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah, and it's again kind of it's a bold bold strategy either way because you got 25 and then 26, and Lewis is an older guy. So do you try to get him as developed as he can to have a shot at winning in 25? Because you know that in 26 you have good a chance as anybody of missing the mark completely, and then he's just out. Then you've lost Lewis. You've lost your chance because he's that old. He's in a bad car. He's not ready to go through all that development again. or do you take the okay, we get through 25, learn everything we can, and bank on getting it right in 26? I don't know. Yeah, I could see them throwing everything at. It's like, let's get Lewis's eighth championship in 25. So we'll make the car whatever he needs, and then in 26 with the new regs, we'll start over and kind of refocus on Leclerc.
Yeah. I right. And it's hard to know too, like, because Vasseur knows Lewis from like his, I think his GP3 days or whatever, maybe F2 back they whatever the hell they called it back then.
Yeah,
Kind of wonder like how is he like also kind of selling and pitching a lot of this to them. So
yeah,
because he has a
exactly.
relationship with both of them. So I mean,
Right.
maybe that's the only thing too that'll kind of keep them from like. I mean, I still think it's gonna be chaos. Um,
Yeah,
but I mean, that's just me. But I mean, I like that. But the other part too
yeah,
is like, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, like I'm really curious kind of what their strategy is because you also haven't heard any reports of like how's their engine. You know, how
yeah,
are they
exactly.
looking for 26? So
Yeah, yeah, and they always seem to be a little bit quieter with that stuff. Not so. Toto's always, big dicking around, and then some of the other guys are just like, yeah, we suck. We gotta figure it out. It's like you get the peacockers like Toto, you know, Red Bull kind of do it a little bit too. And then you got the bottom of the field that's just like, yeah, we're terrible. We're gonna never figure this out. We're tracking our parts off Excel spreadsheets from 1995, and then just throw the middle guys. Ferrari's always pretty quiet, it seems like, and McLaren's pretty quiet until all of a sudden they're at the front of the pack, and you're like, oh yeah, hey, we did all right, cool. So they don't seem to make as much noise about their development or come out, our car's going to do this or that or the other thing.
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of interesting too. And it is like kind of the part I think that I keep forgetting. It's like, how do those guys manage next season? I mean, they clearly finished the year with the fastest car.
Yeah.
They already have basically been like, we're dedicated to Mercedes engines. So, I
Hmm.
mean, it's like kind of an interesting thing. I mean, it's like one of those deals too where you wonder, is there more pressure on the factory teams, that have to build the engine because it's like, oh, we got to make this all work. Where like McLaren, they kind of are like, hey, like we trust Mercedes and we just really need to focus on getting all this aero development and everything figured
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think McLaren's biggest struggle next year is sorting out number one. I think Lando's a hell of a driver, but I think Oscar's got him. Oscar's been in it a lot, kind of the same as the Yuki Liam thing. Oscar's new guy in there, and I think he's mentally a lot stronger too. And him and Mark Webber aren't going to let him be a number two.
No.
So I think the McLaren teammate rivalry is going to get pretty serious pretty quick.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I would say it could be like race number two. It like
Yeah.
goes bad,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
could eat.
Zach Brown can't sit back and go, oh, we don't favor anybody. Dude, everything's all papaya fun around here.
It was
He's going to
go
have
just
to
solve this
say,
over breakfast.
yeah, exactly. He's going to have to put a foot down and be like, okay, this guy's showing the stuff. You back him.
Yeah,
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 no
and it's crazy too because I mean, what like the way Oscar just like Baku was like a perfect example. I mean, nothing seemed to just ruffle his feathers, and he
Yeah,
just
Iceman number two. It's
yeah,
just Stonewall mentality. Nothing gets
right.
to.
So yeah, I don't know. It's really crazy. I mean, it seems like he's got this. Was it 20 whatever 23? It seems like he still like kind of was like getting up to speed, getting closer and closer to Lando, and then last year he really bridged that gap, and now he's
Yeah,
probably sitting back being like, dude, I can do what he did. I
yeah,
can do this. I can beat him.
yeah. I mean,
So
Oscar and Lando got their first wins this year, and
which is
Lando's been
insane.
here a lot longer.
Right.
So, granted, Lando dealt with a shittier car, but Ricardo managed to drag it up into the lead and win a race with it when Lando was there. Granted, Lando was right there with him, but Oscar got it done quick.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that
and even
just,
like look at the circumstance of that first win too. Like
yeah,
most drivers could be like kind of devastated or upset, and like Oscar was kind of just like, "Cool, yeah,
yeah,
I won."
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, like
And then he
sure,
went
there was
another one.
team orders drama, but whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And then he went and backed it up anyways. And he won a bunch of sprint races. So just getting started on winning that earlier in your career, he's got
it's
a good
imp-
shot.
yeah, yeah. It's so funny too. It kind of goes back to like what we were talking about earlier with like the, you know, Leclerc and Sainz team dynamic. It seemed to just kind of sort itself out on the road. Like, sure, every
Yeah.
once in a while they'd kind of have issues, but like, with Ferrari now, they don't have that. McLaren doesn't have that.
Yep.
It's hard to really see like, is Lawson really going to put Max under that much pressure?
I don't think
Maybe.
so.
I don't
I
think
don't
so either. Yeah.
think so either. I think Max is a psychopath. I
Yeah.
think Lawson will be a lot closer to him. And if something happens with Max, a brake caliper locks up again, Lawson will be there to pick up the pieces. But yeah, I don't see him really pressuring him very hard.
I can almost even see it be a thing where they work well enough where Max almost like gives him a win. Like,
Yeah.
oh, he's in the lead. Like, you know what? Screw it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
fine.
Yep.
So,
Or you'll get Lawson like 4 races in, past Max, and just
yeah.
Max.
Be like, you know what? It worked last time. Like, come on.
From down under, he touched.
Yeah, exactly. I, yeah. Well, and then the other part too that like I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, but how quickly do you think science is just going to destroy Albin? I
God, he was what like? I mean, he was way faster in that test right after the last race. He was something like half a second a lap faster
oh
already.
god.
I think I'm probably wrong, but yeah, I mean, first time in the car and he beat Alvin. Uh, and people like Colapinto kind of showed that Alvin, yeah, he's a good driver, but Colapinto walked in and wiped the floor with him and scared him, and then all of a sudden Alvin turns into, he's pressure, that was dirty, he starts whining. Can't stand that stuff, but
No.
yeah,
Well, it
science is
also well
just
it kind right because well I think it highlights exactly like what you just said. It's like I think he does fine when he's like the big fish in the small pond, but as soon as someone
yeah,
else is pressuring him, he's gonna does he have that mental fortitude to like fight back?
yeah. No, I mean he got granted everyone did, but he got eaten up at Red Bull. Max pushed him right out of the sport, and then all of his teammates at Williams have just not been anything special since then.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mr. Big Guy, low expectations from the car, low expectations of the team. If he can drag himself into a point, he's a hero. All good for mentally. You know, I know for someone who's not at that level, that would be an easier environment for me to succeed in than Red Bull,
Yeah.
Ferrari, where it's like, cool, you did your best, buddy. Good on you. But you get a Sainz in there who's just been winning races and is a better driver. Yeah, he's gonna do some damage to Albon.
Yeah, because you also kind of look at science. I mean, it's like his rookie year was up against Verstappen,
Yeah,
and you know so it's like right away he learned like, oh, you need to be tough,
yeah,
and it's like so. I feel like I mean he's gonna come in, especially with still with a point to prove of like I still want a top seat. People
yep,
need to remember me, and it could backfire. But I don't know. I remember because I think it was that same thing. It was like you were talking about like 2020. I mean, like half those like post race Albin interviews, they were just I couldn't even watch them because he was just so mentally broken.
yeah.
And he's like, oh, they raced me so hard and this, and
Yeah,
you're just like, oh,
like
dude,
that's the
like
point. That's
exactly.
the whole idea. You're getting paid millions of dollars to race these cars. Don't cry when someone races you.
Right. Yeah,
I'll step in there. I'll get my ass kicked, but I don't care.
right.
They can put me in the wall first turn, whatever. Walk like a witch. Yeah.
But yeah,
I
so
want, under some circumstance, ideally just on pace somehow, I want Sainz to blow by Hamilton in his Williams and just give him one of the little.
like, dude, if that car's not that, like, you never know. Crazy, as we saw last
Yeah,
season, crazier stuff could happen. A safety
yeah,
car, rain race, whatever. And yeah,
yep,
Science gets up there and they completely, Lewis qualifies poorly and then they screw up his tire strategy.
yeah. Could
Um,
happen.
it could totally happen. And then Fernando will be there too. And he always just he would love to get in the mix of that.
If something like that happened, Fernando would appear out of
Yeah.
just somehow. He comes from like four places up. All of a sudden, like, where did he come from? And then just blow by him too.
You like hear the announcers? They're just like, oh, Alonso went from 14th to 7th somehow miraculously.
Just out of spite.
Yes. Yeah. Oh God. I want to see him in a top car
Yeah,
because I can't. Yeah, it's just beautiful. But yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's sort of the other thing too that I like love because it's like back when I first started watching F1, it was pretty clear. Like, you'd have like, Montoya like on the radio, like Kimi fucking Raikkonen. Like the drivers made it clear like they did not like other drivers. Now it's
yeah,
like this like friendlier, gentler, everyone's kind of buddies, so on and so forth. And we saw that change last year, and I'm like, yes, more of that.
yeah,
It's kind of like almost like the James Stewart, Chad Reed
yeah,
days where you're like, these guys will kill themselves to not let the other person win. And
yeah,
that's more of what I want to see.
yeah,
And in my opinion, that is like where the sport should be. Like, I don't
yeah,
want to see everyone be friends. Maybe because
yeah.
I don't have many friends aside from you. But the other part is also because I'm like, I want to see them go to the death. Like,
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what sport is now. It's modern day gladiators.
yeah,
What humans have done for hundreds of thousands of years or whatever. And so, yeah, bring back V10s, small cars, and fights to the death.
make the cars a little bit more like aggression ready and just
Yeah,
let them have it. So,
exactly. Make F1 great again, damn it.
uh,
Trump will just buy Liberty Media and somehow make F1 great again. Just buying everything else. F1 has turned soft. I've purchased F1 with Elon. We are just be giving a little dog. We are going to bring back V10s and no track limits.
like the environmentalists are gay. This is
Yeah.
all lame. Nobody likes it. Like so.
Oh man, could happen, Chris.
I, dude, anymore. If you say it can't, it probably will.
Yeah, I mean, who had Canada as the 51st state?
Yeah, that's how they'll announce it with the new race in Greenland. So,
Yeah, we need to buy Greenland. We're buying Canada, and then we're renaming Gulf of Mexico. Okay, whatever. Whatever.
all right.
Stuff like that. Like you threat, it says that to Trudeau, and if you can't run your country without ripping us off, you can be our 51st state. But then Trudeau steps down. So it's like, oh shit.
Dude, and he's one of those guys too, where it's like struck me, where I just imagine him like, especially back when like Trump was in office, like they'd have like some meeting at like the UN, and like he'd kind of go up to him and try and act like all like, you know,
Yeah,
diplomatic or whatever, and Trump would just like give him like shoot him some like condescending look because he's such like the New York like alpha male, and
yeah,
he just is like, oh God, and then he'll like say something to him, and then Trudeau has to like run to the bathroom and like have like explosive diarrhea because he's like, oh Jesus, like so,
exactly. Oh man,
so it doesn't shock me.
no, not at all. Well, I think I got to go get my kid here in a second.
Yeah, I should
But
probably get back to work.
yeah, we've
Seeing
done
as
an
how
hour, talking, so probably wrap her up.
sweet.